Good morning, everyone. Welcome back to the channel. Today is December 10th, and we are just hours away from the Federal Reserve's FOMC meeting and interest rate decision. Markets are on edge as investors wait to see whether the Fed delivers another rate cut, and more importantly, will it be 25 basis points, 50 basis points, and what the central bank signals about 2026 economic policy. Let's break down the top FOMC news of the day, what major outlets are reporting, and what today's decision could mean for stocks, crypto, maybe even mortgage rates, gold, and the broader U.S. economy. According to AP News, U.S. markets are trading slightly lower this morning, reflecting a cautious tone ahead of the FOMC. Investors are preparing for what could be a high volatility session, depending on how hawkish or dovish the Fed sounds. The key phrase you'll hear everywhere today is the rate cut is expected. The guidance is the real event. And that sentiment is dominating analyst commentary across financial media. So yes, we're likely getting a 25 basis point Federal Reserve rate cut. But what the Fed projects for next year is going to move markets way more than the rate cut itself. Now stick around because I will be giving you guys my quick breakdown on the Bitcoin price action and the Bitcoin chart ahead of today's FOMC meeting. Now, what analysts expect from the Fed today? Most economists still expect the Fed to cut interest rates today, making this the third cut of the year. But the bigger question is whether the Fed signals a pause going into 2026 or further rate cuts. Yahoo Finance reports Fed is likely to cut rates for a third time this year. What happens next year is less certain. They report that while a cut is likely, the committee is increasingly divided, and traders are unsure whether the Fed is comfortable with inflation progress. So the term policy uncertainty is trending across financial news this morning. Investors want clarity on how many rate cuts in 2026. Is the Fed done cutting for now? How worried is Powell about inflation sticking above 2%? These details will be buried in the dot plot, the economic projections, and Powell's wording during the press conference. So make sure you stay close and pay attention to these clues. Could there be impact on mortgage rates, consumers, and the housing market? That is something that a lot of people can relate to right now. And one of the biggest stories is one from earlier this month from CBS News, which highlights why mortgage rates would drop before the FOMC announcement. As the Fed cuts rates, lenders are already pricing in expectations of slower inflation in 2026, which means we could see lower 30-year mortgage rates, easing pressure in the housing market, increased affordability heading into Q1 2026. That is signaling that these rate cuts could be good for home buyers going into 2026. Let's briefly tune into what Yahoo Finance has to say this morning.
Yeah, good morning, Julie. It is likely that the Fed will cut rates for the third time this year on Wednesday. Investors pricing in a 90% chance that the Fed will cut, a prospect that didn't seem so certain, if you will, just a couple weeks ago, just because there has been so much division within the FOMC over whether to cut rates further, given that inflation has been sort of stalled a full percentage point above the Fed's 2% goal. And as a result of that, I do expect that we could see anywhere from 1 to 5 dissents because they have voiced concerns about inflation being sticky. And we certainly know that Jeff Schmidt dissented last meeting, so there's probably nothing that's really changed at this point in his view to stop him from dissenting again on Wednesday. But then on the flip side, we have had Governor Stephen Miron, who has repeatedly voted to cut rates by 50 basis points instead of the 25 basis point rate cut that we expect on Wednesday, because he believes we're not seeing any inflation from tariffs, and he believes that housing prices are coming down, and that is soon going to be reflected in overall inflation measures.
All right, guys. So you heard it right there from Yahoo Finance, and they seem to be projecting a hawkish outlook for 2026. Now, let me know in the comments section of this video what you guys think for 2026 economic outlook. Are we dovish going into 2026? Are we hawkish? Do we get just one rate cut in 2026, or do we get more than one rate cut in 2026? Now, where markets are looking for the biggest clues right now, the rate cut doesn't matter so much as the Fed's tone today does. So the tone and the hawkish or dovish outlook for 2026 is going to matter the most for the markets, and the markets will react instantly to this language. And so these are the clues that we can be looking for during the FOMC today. And by the way, guys, the live stream here on the channel is already scheduled for our live FOMC coverage today. Make sure you tune in here on AJC for your live FOMC coverage and Bitcoin and crypto market reaction analysis live. Now, these are the clues to look for during the FOMC, and the markets will react to this type of language. So keep an eye out for inflation outlook, labor market cooling, economic slowdown risks, financial stability concerns, and how many cuts, if any, the Fed expects next year. Stocks, gold, crypto, and bonds will all likely move the second Powell addresses these points, and with a lot of volatility. So, of course, if you are going to be trading this, trade cautiously, people. Right now, markets are pricing in the cut already, as we've been seeing, but they are not pricing in a hawkish surprise, and that is something we have to always be prepared for. If Powell hints at fewer cuts or more caution, expect an immediate reaction across Bitcoin, the S&P 500, gold, and the dollar. And like I said, we will be here live covering the Bitcoin price reaction and the market analysis reaction to the FOMC live today. What today means for investors and traders. What does it mean for investors and traders? And guys, remember, we will be getting into the Bitcoin chart. So stick around for the rest of the video and do not go anywhere, as we will be talking about the price of Bitcoin here in just a second. For investors, today's Fed decision is about positioning for 2026. As the 2025 year is coming to an end, a dovish tone at the FOMC today could spark a year-end Santa rally in Bitcoin especially, but also tech stocks, risk assets, which we seem to be moving more towards altcoins being the more of the risk asset than Bitcoin. But even precious metals could rally on a dovish tone here. So we need to really, really be locked in on today's FOMC meeting, as it is the most important of the year. Now, a hawkish tone could push markets into more volatility, especially with concerns about slowing growth heading into Q1 of 2026 and with the division within the Fed. The Fed rate cut today could spark massive, massive moves in Bitcoin. And where the current price of Bitcoin is, we are literally hanging on here by a thread, and seems as though traders and investors are currently awaiting this FOMC decision. And again, these events typically, buy the rumor, sell the news, priced in typically. But is it priced in, as we are still recovering from a major dip in the Bitcoin price? So before we get into the price action here and the technical analysis here, in summary, today's Federal Reserve interest rate decision will likely bring a small cut. Some are expecting a 50 basis points cut. Now, if that does not happen, that will be a slight letdown, increased volatility in the markets. But the real story is the Fed's economic projections and tone for next year. Will Powell confirm more easing is coming, quantitative easing, or will he warn markets to slow down? So the big warning, Powell's last warning of 2025, coming live on the FOMC today. Again, tune in here. Link will be in the description, or just go to the channel and check the scheduled live stream. And we will find that out in just a few hours when they make the decision. So stay tuned. As we go into the charts here, take a look at the crypto market and heading into the FOMC, what the real-time price action is looking like for Bitcoin and Ethereum. So Bitcoin right now, let's take a look at the daily quickly. We are again recovering from a dip, right? Recovering from this dip. Now, Depending on what happens in today's FOMC meeting and the tone, as we mentioned, the tone to watch out for, where are we at on the daily for Bitcoin? As you can see, this was the bottom here, and we are now currently actually above the 50-day moving average here in yellow. So we actually broke above it and are now managing to hold support there above it. I will say this. If we go back and we compare these dips, right? Compare the dips. And we look back here, when we got above the 50-day moving average here, we are starting to do that here, right? Above the 50-day moving average, in between this indicator and the 50-day moving average. In between this indicator and the 50-day moving average, right? Now, whenever we get up here to this indicator, and we can pop this indicator, that's bullish trend reversal. That will get us out of this dip, just like it got us out of this dip. Now, are we there yet? That's a big question, and in my opinion, I don't think so. We are awaiting to see what happens today, and I think that leading into next year, I think everything is in limbo right now at this very moment. Bitcoin at $91,800 at the 50-day moving average. Still waiting to see what the markets decide to do after today's FOMC decision. Now, this did lead to a rally once we got above the 50-day moving average here. We also had the LSMA in blue cross the 50-day moving average here. Same thing happening here. The only difference is the 200-day moving average is a lot farther away than it was down here, right? We were just very slightly below the 200-day moving average. So if Bitcoin rallies here, guys, is it a fake rally? Is it a dead cat bounce? Is it just a bear market relief rally? Because if we rally to the 200-day moving average, or even a lower, but if we rally to the 200-day moving average, then that could easily, very easily put in a very nasty, nasty head and shoulders top pattern on the daily time frame. If we get rejected at $100,000. Now, 100,000 psychologically 100K is that massive wall right there at 100K. Not only that, but the 200-day moving average is also sitting right at $100,000 Bitcoin, $100,000 to $110,000 Bitcoin, and you've got the previous, this potential left shoulder over here, also at $100,000. So what I'm getting at here is that even if we rally to 100K, guys, we cannot get too excited. We have to be prepared for that rejection at the 200-day moving average. Now, we also want to be prepared for what happens if we don't get rejected at 100K. And if we do come up here, bounce above 100K and hold 100K. Now, all this will not happen immediately today, but depending on what happens today in today's FOMC will absolutely likely determine the direction of where we go. So the interest rate decision and the tone and the outlook for 2026 in today's FOMC will 100% determine the direction, in my opinion, that we go. Now, with this being said, before you even look at any of these price predictions, please remember that nothing you see on this channel and in this video is financial advice. Nothing here is financial advice. This is for entertainment and informational purposes and educational purposes only. Please read the disclaimer. Now that we got that out of the way, we can talk about what happens if Bitcoin comes here, right? That puts in a price at resistance of around $135,000 Bitcoin. Okay? Could 135K Bitcoin be the top? Possibly. If we do fulfill the lower projection, then 60,500 to 72,000 here at our previous resistance here would absolutely be my go-to bottom for Bitcoin. So those are the two levels we're looking at here. We do have the potential to run up to this resistance at around 135,000. That could potentially be the top, but I've got something else for you here. And then of course 60,500 to approximately, now that we're moving on up around the $65,000 range, there is likely, as that is the bottom level long-term support to pay attention to for Bitcoin. Now, what happens if CZ is correct and 2026 is a super cycle and the 4-year cycle is really dead for Bitcoin and crypto? Well, guys, remember, not financial advice. But if for some reason Bitcoin breaks out of this daily wedge here, the measured move, the literal measured move target of this wedge pattern puts Bitcoin right at that psychological moon level of $1 million in Bitcoin price. Now, again, not financial advice. Take it with a grain of salt. That is the measured move if we break out of this wedge on the daily and weekly time frames. Now, again, does it seem more likely that we come back down to support first since we just retraced from resistance? It does. It does seem more likely that that happens, but, and you know, something else that seems more likely to make that happen is the fact that they are trying to convince everyone that 2026 is going to be a super cycle and super bullish. So it's a mental, you know, and it always will be in crypto. So you just got to be ready for that. No one truly knows what the market makers are going to do to us here, but I do have ideas. I have projections. I have price targets and price predictions that I can share with you guys and share my opinions with you guys. And if that is what you enjoy, then make sure you subscribe to the channel and smash the like button. And I definitely hope to see you in our next live stream and today's FOMC live stream coming up in just a couple of hours. I expect to see you there. Now, what about ETH real quick? We're going to look at ETH just really quickly. Real quick. What has ETH done here? Well, ETH did break out of that beautiful wedge over there, but I want to look at something different. Let's look at this chart here. Very quickly for ETH, we're just going to go back to this chart because we are coming back to that support. We're coming back to that previous support that I have circled here. We're coming back to it just like we did here. Now, we need to get above it. So ETH, level to reclaim, has to get above the 50 and the LSMA moving averages. 3,800, man. Remember, 3,800 was that key level I continued to mention at the 50-week moving average for Ethereum. So Ethereum's level to reclaim and hold needs to be 3,800. In my opinion, we need to be at 3,800. Even 3,500. 3,500 is nice, but that's still... 3,500 would be testing the 50-week moving average and testing the previous support. Okay, so we really, 3,500 would be good to hold, but 3,800 is that key sweet spot for me. Now, with that being said, guys, I hope you enjoyed this video and this update on the pre-FOMC market analysis and news this morning. Thank you guys for tuning in. I hope to see you in the FOMC live coverage stream and future streams and videos. Thank you again, and I wish you nothing but the best and good gains and prosperity in your life. Don't forget to drop a comment in the comment section and check the links in the description. And I will see you guys in the next one.